Good afternoon and welcome back. We've been having some very rich discussion this afternoon. We have a set of 4 panel discussion. We're at the very last panel discussion and I'm looking forward to it. The title is Reflecting on Hyflex. And Hyflex is something that we've been using a lot in our teaching and learning for this semester. This session will be moderated by Dr. Pam Mills. She's the Dean for the School of Science she's the Dean for the School of Natural and Social Sciences. Just as I said before, to ensure an organized question and answer session, if you'd like to ask a question at the end of the panel discussion, please use the hand raising feature, or if you prefer that we ask a question for you, please use the chat feature and message Elena directly. In-person guests, please come to the mic and wait to be called in. As a reminder, please unmute your microphone when your name is called to ask your question. If possible, please turn on the video component and please state your name and affiliation. Dr. Mills.
Thank you, Victor. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody online. This is going to be a panel about the Hyflex modality, or actually the Hyflex attribute. So hybrid flexible, what we're calling Hyflex, is a loosely defined practice that allows students to really choose between an in-person or a remote learning environment. The practice seems to have originated about 15 years ago in from San Francisco State University when Dr. Brian Beatty's program created an institutional technology master's program and decided to run it in this hybrid flexible mode. I think that we want to be clear that there are 2 key ideas to Hyflex. One is that there is an alternative to an in-person classroom, and the second is that the locus of control is with the student. So the alternative to the in-person classroom could be an asynchronous class, it could be a streamed synchronous online class. There are a variety of models, and we're going to hear about that today. But the locus of control is with the students. So at Lehman and at CUNY, Hyflex became an attribute, HYFX, I believe, that could be attached to any modality. So this past fall, Lehman faculty and department chairs were really scrambling and to this sort of constantly changing and evolving response to the pandemic, right? And how we were dealing with rooms, environment, safety, et cetera, was changing daily. So I think it's very important to acknowledge that many of the Lehman faculty adopted and adapted rapidly, daily in some cases, using the Hyflex modality. And so there were lots of variations on how Hyflex got implemented this fall. I don't think that's normal. I think that was a wonderful Lehman faculty response to keeping our students safe and able to continue their academic momentum. But the panelists here are folks who actually thought a lot about the Hyflex modality, and in some cases participated in trainings, in some cases did not, but have really adopted this as a mode for their classroom. And so what they're going to do is talk to you about a couple of different different questions: how they chose to do Hyflex, what they've learned from the training, and what challenges they've met, and how they're dealing with those challenges. And like what we heard from the last group, we're in the middle of it right now. So there should be 6 panelists, and I don't see them. I have to turn around to see everybody. So I think everyone is here. I'll ask them to introduce themselves as they speak. What I want to do is ask each panelist to answer the question, what has intrigued you about Hyflex? Why did you choose to use this attribute? And how has it lived up to or not lived up to your expectations? So what I'll do is I will go in alphabetical order. So I'll start with Michael Buckley, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. I only heard of Hyflex months ago, I think probably in the spring when the training session was being offered. So I'm very new to Hyflex, but I really thought that it sounded like a great way to transition from our pandemic Zoom format into a academic environment that was going to be still influenced by the pandemic, but in ways we weren't quite sure. So I felt this was a really nice way to sort of transition into a post-pandemic academic environment. And so I wanted to participate in that transition way, as Dr. Mills mentioned, was safe for our students and accommodating for their needs. So that was the key reason for why I chose Hyflex. But there was another reason, and that is that I have been trying for many years now to incorporate technology into the classroom in ways that can benefit our students. So I was very eager to see how Hyflex can be incorporated with the other kinds of uses of technology that I've been adopting to create a better educational experience for our students. And that's still a kind of exploratory mission that I'm on with respect to Hyflex and Blackboard and other aspects of educational technology.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from Migdio Dominguez. Now, I will say he is here as a faculty member of Journalism and Media Studies. You might know him in other contexts, but in this context, he's a faculty member in JMS. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. For me, the concept of Hyflex started early on in the pandemic, and I saw a need for me to have that collaboration experience similar to that you have in person. But using technology presented various challenges, but knowing that the collaboration tools available to us provided by the university, you can name those tools as Zoom, Teams, and at one point Cisco WebEx. I felt confident that I could do that very efficiently. The challenges were how do I keep the students engaged, turning my material to be in digital format, knowing that my class is mostly an in-person class in which the students have to be exposed to various technologies in media and production. So in essence, the challenges were there, but having that engagement with the students, using the technology, having that reliability, the confidence that the students had to enter the sessions was critical, and we put a lot of effort to making sure that that was the case, and I'm sure our faculty, myself included, felt confident. I'm going to speak a little bit about being the Zoom administrator for campus along with my colleague Steve. My concern was right at the onset was how many support calls we were going to get right on the onset, and to my pleasant surprise, there were very few. And so I think our faculty show a tremendous amount of strength, confidence, and the students felt that also through the start of the pandemic. And so I feel proud to the level of communication and interaction and collaboration we have been able to accomplish. And I feel strongly that our community did pull it through. Yes, some faculty have struggled. Many students have too. But indeed, what intrigued me to do all of this was, of course, the pandemic. That was the challenge, and we did come through. So I think my hat's off to everyone in our campus.
Thank you. Let's hear from Rhiannon Dowling from the Department of History. Is she here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you chose Hyflex? I don't think she's here. Yeah, I'm not seeing her on here.
She's present. She's having a hard time connecting on the there she
Okay.
goes.
All right, well,
Can you hear me? Oh, good. You can hear me now. I'm so sorry. My internet went out, so now I'm in my car using my phone as a hotspot. Can you hear me okay?
I can
yeah.
hear you, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to
great.
pipe in and say I'm a big fan of the Hyflex format, and for all the reasons that Migdio and Michael mentioned. And I did take the training with Migdio and Elena this summer. It was really useful. But I think just the one thing I want to mention is the increased accessibility that it allows. I teach a class. I teach a Russian history class. We typically, it's an upper level history class. We typically offer it in the evenings with the hope of being more accessible. So allowing students who work full time to take the class. But having the Hyflex format and allowing both asynchronous students and students to Zoom in has made it so that we can not only have students who work 9 to 5s, but we can have students who work service jobs too, who might work in the evenings, which I think has really made my classroom a lot richer and more interesting. So it's both sort of the students who are comfortable with history and the students who are taking the class because they've taken another class with me and they're kind of comfortable with me, and it's made the class much more interesting and valuable. And I think I've incorporated them in the administration of the class a lot. And this is part of what I think part of the training, one of the things we came up with in the training, that, you know, when I have in-person class, one student or a couple students are responsible for paying attention to the Zoom while I'm talking. And so if somebody's got their hand up or if somebody commented in the chat, then they kind of help each other. And it's added this element of active learning that's really was unintentional, but I think is really valuable. And in addition, the asynchronous students are kind of self-paced, and so they've definitely, I mean, they're people who already know me generally, so I kind of had to pre-approve and say, I know this person can do the work. But I think it's given them this extra layer of sort of responsibility that's made them invested in the class. And yeah, I'm a big fan of the technology too. It's very cool. It feels like you have like a virtual film crew following you. So that's all that I wanted to say about it.
Thank you. Stephen Fulacesa from Computer Science.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Fulacesa and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Computer Science. So initially my course was designed to be a hybrid, but along the way we changed it to be a Hyflex. And but as a lecturer, like over the course of the pandemic, I've had like a lot of discussions with students, like what kind of like modality do they like, and we have like some students saying, I like being online, and then there's like a few students that are saying, I want to come back in person. And then also you do have like students that are saying, I transferred to Lehman College and I'll be graduating very soon. And I've never been to the campus. I don't know how it looks like. And I may not even get an opportunity to see like what it's gonna be. And I think that part, I felt like, I think I could be able to do something in terms of like giving them the experience of like at least coming to the campus if they want to come to the campus at least once and see how the campus looks like. Sit in a classroom and feel like pretty much like the classroom environment. And then like if there's like those that want to stay online, they can stay online and also experience like the online environment. So there was like that part. There was that part whereby I had to do that. In terms of challenges, like when I started doing the online classes, I've had like a few of like, let's say, technical difficulties. For example, yesterday I was in Common Hall and I'm teaching, and then the internet, the Wi-Fi goes off, and then you don't even know that like whether it's like a fault with your computer or it's the Wi-Fi, like let's say like building wide. So you're there like wondering what's happening. So you can continue teaching those that are in person, but you're not able to like to provide like the service like to those that are online, and you have to figure that, like those things like along the way. But so far, the feedback that I've gotten from students, for example, those that have come that have been to my classes, they like that I'm there for them, and they like that they are coming back to seeing like a person, and they're coming back to attend a class right here in the campus. And also those that are online, they're saying like, we still feel safe like over here being online, and we like the content that is being delivered. So that's the part like whereby that I got interested into the Hyflex, but it was like more of like to make sure that like we are providing like a service that is gonna be able to make our students like feel safe, and also like at the same time like they should be happy with the education that they are receiving. So.
Thank you. We keep hearing the same things of accessibility and challenges of engagement. So I want to ask Talisha Gonzalez from Health Sciences to speak about her experiences.
Sure. So when I first started teaching at Lehman, my very first classroom was over at the high school, and there was no tech at all. I had to completely modify my semester plans to go back, almost back in time, right, to paper and pen. And so when I heard about Hyflex, I remembered that very first semester, and I was like, yes, I'm interested, sign me up. And one of the things that has been really, really helpful in what I teach epidemiology and a research course. One of the things that I have really enjoyed is in real time being able to look up data when students have a question. And even when I was teaching hybrid, you know, depending on what classroom I was slotted, that was not necessarily an option. And so now I can actually create all of my lesson plans, incorporate even moments for kind of going off the cuff based off of where the group is and questions that they're asking in real time. And I love that. It's really important to me that we are looking at data. We're moving into this age, right, where students are inundated on social media with information that is not based on science. And so in that moment, to be able to pull up a study, to be able to show them the library's page, to do a quick PubMed search, but I still have in the classroom my whiteboard, because I am also I depend on being able to draw illustrations and write those notes. I'm also reinforcing positive study habits for my students. And so for me, that Hyflex opportunity really merges or provides me with all of these opportunities within one classroom. And my students, it's interesting, right? Because one of the, I know we haven't gotten there, but one of the challenges sometimes is my attention, where the camera is showing what I'm doing. It's following me across the room as I'm moving in front of the board, the dry erase board. There's another camera that's showing my PowerPoint, and so it feels like you really have all of the tools to be able to deliver the material and the content, and to be able to shift and adapt. And to answer questions that maybe you didn't think about when you were planning your lesson. And so I've really enjoyed that. Now the piece that I was going to say before is the challenge is like making sure everyone's getting your attention, right? Because while you are really engaged in this live moment with students who are physically present, you also have folks who are chatting, right? So a big piece in health services administration, we have students, and other folks have said this, who are working full time, have schedules that are competitive in terms of class schedules. They have families, they have lots of demands on their time. And so they may not be able to put their mic on. And so the chat is just going, it's just chiming. And so, definitely like a high paced, energetic environment sometimes. And you have those days where there are lulls. And the goal when there are those lulls is to try to figure out how to engage people. I'm finding we're hitting a lull now, which I think if I reflect back before Hyflex, typically we hit a lull here because this is midterm time and people need to kind of re-energize. So I'm not sure if that's really due to Hyflex. It's just typical of the semester. But overall, that's why I was really excited about being able to peg this attribute to my classes. And it's really kind of opened doors for me in terms of, again, like how robust my materials can be from week to week. So thanks.
Great, thank you. We have the sixth panelist is Brian. Here he is. So Brian, you're on.
I'm Brian Murphy from computer science. So my thoughts about going Hyflex started in spring 2020 as we went online. I had spent an awful lot of time as we were moving online trying to figure out how I could make the online classes, make that experience as much like an in-person experience, of course, without them getting my body language and my facial expressions all the time. So I spent a lot of time that semester, and it bled into the summer and into the fall, trying to figure out how to take advantage of different tech. And I actually went through different hardware. I switched hardware a number of times, changed software to figure out how I could get the experience to look as much as possible like being in person. And it became pretty clear to me within a few weeks of going online that there were some advantages to what we were doing that I had never thought of when I was teaching in person. One of them was I was recording the lessons and posting them so that students could go back and watch the lessons at their leisure. I got tremendous number of positive comments. Students love the recordings. And in fact, if I'm a little bit late putting a recording up, I'll often get 15 or 20 emails telling me they need the recordings. So the students really love having the recordings. And once I learned to tolerate listening to my voice in the recordings, I watched them and I realized that there was a lot of value to these recordings. The other thing is there was one of the tools that I'm using a graphics tablet together with digital whiteboards because I don't present PowerPoint slides or anything like that. I create content while I'm teaching. And the digital whiteboard, to my surprise, I found out was far superior to the real whiteboards. So early on, as we moved online, I started thinking, when I go back into class in person, I'm going to be recording the lessons and I'm going to use the digital whiteboard. And the digital whiteboard supports that without even having to have a camera in the room. But I did. I have a couple of webcams that I got, and I started imagining, well, if I go back into the classroom and I'm using the digital whiteboard and I'm recording the lessons, I could just as easily continue streaming the lessons. And I started thinking about how that would be beneficial, for instance, for students who maybe they're not feeling too well on one day and they've got to make a decision whether it's worthwhile to make a trip into school. Well, this makes it really easy. Even if they're just a little bit under the weather, they could stay home and attend the lesson through Zoom and or watch the lesson later on the video. So I started thinking about that. And I also noted, I talked to students throughout that first semester and beyond about what they thought of the courses online. And they said, well, some classes, they didn't like them online, but they did seem to like, there seemed to be a reasonable, maybe 40 to 50% of the students, depending on which class it was that I was teaching, that told me that they actually liked the idea of the online classes. And so I started thinking, well, what if I go and I teach the classes in person, but make it available if they want to do it from home. I had not even heard of Hyflex at that point, but that was in my mind that I wanted to do that. So as the fall semester was approaching, even before that, when we putting the schedules together, I thought to myself, there's a lot of students who are not comfortable coming on campus, but there's others who are desperate to come on campus. And so I wanted to give them the option. And so even though I had been thinking of it in terms of when everything is hopefully back to normal soon, for the fall semester, I thought this was a way to accommodate students and let them approach the course the way they wanted.
Thank you. Now, panelists, if I want to try this. Now, if you were in the room, I think I would just look at you and say, I'm going to throw some questions out, and whoever wants to answer it can answer it. But I'm not really sure how to manage this here, so let's just give it a try. So I have a series of questions, and also if anyone out there wants to ask questions now rather than wait till the end, just shoot them in the chat because I can bring them up. But the first question that came up is, how are you assessing the effectiveness as you proceed this semester? And really, are you seeing any differences in student learning from those who are in your class versus those who are at home? So I'm not going to call on you to see who wants to pick up that question.
I think I could get started.
I guess I'll give it a shot. So actually, the assessment of some of my classes changed during the online classes. So so I teach programming classes, and one of the things we've done for years is have the students, of course, write programs, but then come in and present their programs to the class. And this does not mean read the program straight through, but instead explain how the program works, explain the thinking process that occurred while the student was developing the program, talk about the difficulties they had, where they got stuck, and how they got past being stuck. And when we moved online, I decided, and in fact, most faculty in my department, we talked about this, and we decided the best way to handle this was to have the students make videos instead of doing it well, not in person, but instead of doing it live streamed, to make videos of this information. And it allowed the students to make longer videos and also to do second and third and fourth and however many takes they needed to feel comfortable with what they were providing us. And then we made a much shorter presentation in front of the class. And so our assessment hasn't really changed, but the way that the students have provided us their presentations has changed. And we're expecting to continue that, and I am doing that this semester with my Hyflex classes, having the students create videos to do those presentations. And we expect to continue doing that into the future. Into the future. I have to say that as far as the difference in students learning, I actually think that what I'm seeing is that when we went online, the students had already experienced being in class with me in the spring semester. And when we went online, I had a lot of interaction with the students in class, and it continued when we went online. But each semester thereafter, when I got a new group of students, and if there were lots of students in the classes, and there were more each semester who had never had a class with me, it became harder to get them to interact with me. And I've noticed that in terms of assessing them, I've always used the interaction as part of my assessment. And we've gotten back on campus I got about 40% at the beginning of the semester, and it's about 25% of my students are still showing up to each class. And the ones that are in person, I'm able to get them to interact more readily, but I've noticed that it's contagious even through Wi-Fi, and that the students at home are interacting more, I think because the students who are in front of me are interacting more. In that way, I'm able to assess the students a lot better, because I'm often able to tell how the class is doing from the comments I hear from students and from them answering my questions, and I know how to address their problems when I've got that interaction. If I don't have that interaction, I'm kind of going blind. I don't know how to change up the material that I'm talking about, or what should I concentrate on, or should I redo something? So having gone back to the classroom, even if it's not all the students, has reintroduced that component to my teaching. It's not that it totally went away, but it's been hard to get students who have their cameras off and their microphones off to engage. And even when I do have maybe a core group of 7 or 8 who want to engage readily, when I throw out a question and the mics are off, it's sometimes a comedy of errors waiting for a microphone to come on. And I've given up waiting for someone to answer, and I start talking, and now they're trying to answer. So having a core group in front of me who can interact with me very easily has been very beneficial. And as I said, it seems to have spurred on the students at home to do the same thing.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Stephen, you want to pick it up?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna add like something onto what Brian has already said. So I'm also like in the Department of Computer Science, and that means I'm mostly like teaching like courses like in programming. And one thing that I've done, like for example in my class, is like the idea of when we started like area on, like let's say in the spring of last year, I would call like names like for students like to make sure that like they're able like to answer. So if I have like a concept that I've covered and then I'm trying to repeat it to see if they have understood it, I'll start like mentioning like let's say like names like from the top of like the list that I have like my roster, and that proved like to me that whether like someone was there, but also whether they understood like what I was trying to convey. So that I was like just like checking like an in-person activity. Now, when we have moved like to this like Hyflex mode, one thing that I've noticed is most of the students that are coming to class are actually asking like more questions, or they are providing like contributions to some of the materials that I'm presenting. But when we do like the same, like let's say when we cover like the class online, they tend to keep quiet, and they are not providing like any feedback, or they are not asking like any questions. But there's like still like a few of those that are like when we are online, they are comfortable like asking questions, and they are comfortable about like, let's say for example, like being recorded. So for those that may be like maybe like timid or scared, like let's say to have like their voice like recorded, like when we are online, they are actually able to ask like questions like when we are in the room. And also that gives me like, for example, like a way how I could be able to change the materials that I'm presenting, because now I'm getting like more feedback from my students than when we are online, because that those that couldn't be able to ask a question when we are online are actually able to come in the room and say, I do have like a question about this, like, and how do we go about it, or how do you explain it, or how can you clarify it? So that's giving me like even like a wider pool of people that are giving me feedback about the materials that I'm presenting. And the other part is just going back in terms of like when we move online, how are we assessing them? I'll just echo the same thing that Brian has said. Like there's a part of like if it's like projects for some of the courses, we are mainly like, yes, let's say like using like videos, but also like Blackboard has become like this like great tool that we have had to use like over the pandemic, like in terms of like creating like the quizzes, and those quizzes are actually giving me like the feedback in terms of like what materials they understood, or what I need like to emphasize on like in the future materials. So those are like some of the things I've observed.
Thank you, Stephen. There's a question and answer in the chat that was asked by Dean Hurley about has attendance of the in-person classes dropped off as the semester has gone? And Rhiannon has answered that question, so I'll ask her to speak, if she can, in her car. There you go.
I think I can. Can you hear me? I'm good.
Yes.
Okay. No, I was just kind of echoing what Brian was saying, that there's definitely a core group of students who just wants to be in person. And there are some people who really know that they learn better that way. And so we had a lot of anxiety at the training about like, what if I just come in to teach to an empty room and everybody zooms in? But it feels like there are a couple people who want that face-to-face interaction, and that makes it feels worthwhile. But it seems like the other students kind of determine whether their schedule allows, kind of use the opportunity to be flexible.
Actually, also one of my classes, I'm teaching a intro programming lecture with 205 students, and actually in the Levenger Theaters where I'm teaching it. And the first day of class, I had almost 90 students show up in person. And it's dropped to about 50, but it's been 50 pretty consistently. About 25% of the class is showing up. There is some turnover. There are some students who show up sometimes, and other times they don't. But there's about 40 who are always there in that class. And those 40 students don't want to do the classes online. And there's clearly some students who don't want to show up in person, because there's probably, I don't remember the exact number, but it's close to 100 of them that have never shown up, and they're very happy to just stay home.
There's another question. I'm sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add on that note that in my class, it's a class of 30 students, and I have consistently about 5 students showing up. What I find interesting, though, is they're always the same 5 students. So I have, as others were mentioning, a group of students who really are hungry for that on-campus experience, and another group of students who, for various reasons, I'm not sure what they might be, are remaining online. And that is one question mark I have in my mind about the Hyflex format, because my sense of what the Hyflex format is supposed to do is give students various points of access to come or stay online depending upon their circumstances. So I'm not seeing the dynamic mix of students who are either in class or online that I hoped to have seen. And the numbers are probably about where I thought they would be, with a small group of students coming in person, at least at this point, and most remaining synchronously online.
Yep, thank you. Migdio.
Well, I can add, in my experience, for the start of the 2021 spring semester, the enthusiasm from my class to come to campus wasn't so much there. I have about 1/4 of them, as Brian indicated for his class. But this semester, and knowing that the vaccination rates and the safety steps that our campus has taken through our administration, the enthusiasm is greater. I'm seeing 50% of the class attending, and the students are asking when do they need to come, especially for my media production class, which has that component of in-person. So my students are constantly asking me, when we're going to do those lab experiences? They want to know, and they want to be here. And that's great to know. And I do feel that the students want to leave that college life experience. And I'm sure everybody agrees on that, and we hear it all the time. They do want to feel that experience, being on campus, walking on campus, going to the cafeteria, meeting friends and coworkers, et cetera. So we're hoping that that increases, and I think with the Hyflex abilities that we have right now and the students being enthusiastic about coming to campus, I think it's gonna get even better.
Taylisha, were you trying to jump in?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I have the opposite trend. So on the first day of class, there was just me. And as time has gone on, the following week there was one student showed up. The next week, 2 students. Students are asking, can I come next week? And I just got my first vaccine, but I heard security is very serious, so I don't want to take a chance. Please count on me to be in person in 3 weeks. And, I've said time and time again, reinforcing it's flexible. You don't even have to let me know. You pop in, you pop out based off of your preferences and your availability. And these are the assessments, the assignments that you're still responsible for. So that's a different trend for me. But, for early on, one of the confusions for my students, a place where there was a lot of confusion was around, this is an in-person class in CUNY First. And, in terms of marketing the course as Hyflex and students understanding, you have these 3 options, because I offer all 3, the asynchronous too. And that was almost like an educational campaign. My enrollment numbers were very low initially, which, generally faculty are concerned about, because it means you're in jeopardy of your class being canceled. And so what ended up happening, I don't know if word spread, because a lot of our students were concerned about the vaccine requirement, for many different reasons. And so before I knew it, within the first 2 days of classes actually starting, my class was filled and I was being asked to over-tally. The other piece, in terms, you got me thinking, Pam, about the actual, what we might have as a metric for how students are doing, the actual grades. And I was thinking about that when you asked this question. Are grades better or worse in my Hyflex class? It's a difficult question to answer, right? Because we're still living through a pandemic. So how much of what I'm seeing in dips of grades or low engagement is also pandemic fatigue? And how much of it is, trying to kind of catch a rhythm with the way that this class is being offered? But one interesting thing that happened yesterday, last night, was that a student asked, where are the recordings of the class? And, at this point, I've gone over this several times. There's a tutorial on where to find recordings of the class. But, you still, okay, we're still catching a rhythm here. Hyflex is new. And so I went in, and another student chimed in and started, telling the other students in the class, exactly which section, certain material was in. And I know one of the things I want to do next is actually create timelines for my recordings, but there's never enough time in a semester, right? But you can do that. You can create outlines so that students can jump to the point in the recording that they want to hear again. And what I didn't realize, which was a benefit of the Hyflex in ways that wasn't when I did hybrid, right? Because maybe I only recorded the sessions that were asynchronous or synchronous, is that students who are attending synchronously or in person are relying on those recordings to go back and to look at the way that we calculated something or the way that I explained an assignment. And so that is an unanticipated benefit also. And whether or not it's helping with assessments, I'm interested in your question now, and I might actually run some data analysis to see, but again, right, figuring that we're now 19, 20 months into a pandemic, so there's gonna be an effect there. But I'm interested to see whether or not having those additional materials and the options are increasing. Definitely as time is going on into the semester, you know, how many students have I submitted early alerts for? I actually think my Hyflex class, I teach one Hyflex, two synchronous, one asynchronous. I think my Hyflex class is the fewest number of early alerts I reported was for that class. And probably the highest number of early alerts was for my async class. So again, right, just anecdotal data, we can't really do anything with that. But your question really struck me. So I'm gonna come back to you, Pam, once I get to look at that data.
Okay, so panelists, we
Pam?
have
Oh,
5.
Pam,
Well, hang
I'd
on,
like-
Brian. Brian, I'm gonna cut you off. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm the dean. You're the chair. I get to do this. So, just kidding. We have 5 minutes. That means I'm going to ask a question. One's yes, no. Are you going to do Hyflex again in the spring? Number 2, what advice would you give to other faculty who are considering it? And you have 1 minute. So, Brian, go first since you wanted to speak, but you have 1 minute.
Okay. Well, if you're considering doing Hyflex, you've got to play with the hardware and the software. You've got to figure out how to make it work. IT has some very nice mobile carts, and I haven't seen the actual rooms that are set up for it, but it might work beautifully for you, but it also might not. In my department, we have different needs, computer science, and the equipment doesn't quite work for us. So you've got to play with the equipment and see how it works, and not just for a few minutes, because you may not realize some ability that the equipment has that will open your eyes to how you might use it. And you've got to be thinking of ways outside the box of how to take advantage of the technology, because it's not always straightforward. I can say that every semester since we've been online, I've made a number of discoveries that let me change how I was presenting some of my material, not all of it. So you do want to play with the material. And the thing I wanted to interrupt about, so I don't want to miss this, is that I heard a comment from that the students benefit from the recordings, and they absolutely do. But if you are presenting the recordings to the students through Zoom and you give them the link into Zoom, Zoom has a transcript that is text searchable. And so they could just type in some keywords. It will search the text for those keywords, and it synchronizes the video to the search. So students can very quickly find exactly the part of the video they're interested in.
Brian, yes or no? Are you teaching Hyflex next semester?
Am I? Yes.
Okay.
Actually forever, I think.
Anyone else want to give advice?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. First piece of advice, if you're teaching in Carmen and you could get room 351, which is the built-out room for Hyflex, do it. I think MIGDO needs really a round of applause here. It's a great room. I've had no tech problems whatsoever. And it's been really a great experience. Students on Zoom can hear the students in the classroom. I have 4 different screens I could look at any time, and I'm able to have different material on different screens. So it's really been great. The other piece of advice that I would give, and this is really one reason why I felt very comfortable moving to a Hyflex format, is I had already built out a fair amount of asynchronous work on Blackboard. So there is already in place for me and the students to have multiple points of contact each week in the course. So I don't have the difficulty of thinking about, okay, somebody hasn't been in person, I haven't seen somebody's face online. How do I go back and see whether or not they're engaged with the work? Because I've already built out different assignments and different points of contact I can look at throughout each week to see whether or not they're keeping up with the material in a way that will lead to successful outcomes for them.
Same thing, Michael. Yes or no next semester?
Oh, yeah, I am teaching one course, Hyflex, next semester,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Anybody else want to jump in? I think we have a couple more
Can
minutes.
I follow Michael on this?
Yeah, go, Migdio.
Michael, thank you very much for the shout out. Really appreciate it. And I want to take my minute first to say yes, definitely implementing Hyflex for the foreseeable future. We don't know if this is going to stay for us forever, but I want to say that what we're doing in IT, as Eddie pointed out in the chat, we're building 170 classrooms with Hyflex technology, and the experience, we hope, is going to be magnificent for all the faculty. We're going to be providing training, and I saw David Gantz had a question if faculty is going to be getting training. We're working in partnership with the Provost Office, the Office of Online Education, and I want to give credit to the deans and the faculty to make sure that this technology is effective and user-friendly for the most part. We want to make it transparent. And so our idea is to provide devices such as high-quality laser projectors, cameras that can follow you, beamforming microphone that you don't need to wear, so the microphone is going to be in the room. And for that, we have those two rooms, the one that Michael mentioned, which is Carman 351, and Carman 338. And on the dates that we're going to be doing these demonstrations are going to be October 27th. That's going to be happening in Carman 351, limited in-person attendance, and the rest is going to be over Zoom. And on November 2nd at 12 p.m., and more information will be forthcoming from the Office of Online Education. And yes, we are very excited, and we are working really hard to make sure that everyone who is going to be using this technology can use it with, in fact, minimal training. So the idea is that you can use these rooms as you normally use your cell phones. And so far, we are very happy. And we hope that after this training, you guys can give us feedback, because these are two pilots, and we still have time to make changes for the future deployment. So I'm very excited, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Rhiannon? Talisha? Yes, no for next
I'll
semester?
just say yes, I'm going to do it again.
Okay.
Yes, on board.
That also applies to me.
All right. I think we're over, right? I'm being told we're at the end here. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the panelists, especially home here, remote, in cars. Thank you for coming in. I think it was a lot that we learned about being effective in the Hyflex classroom, and there's a lot we're going to be learning going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mills. And I'm sure that if the audience, whether in person or online, have any question, I'm sure that Dr. Mills and the panel, they're more than happy to entertain those questions. So please send them an email. You can also email Migdio, Steve Castellana, or Elena with other questions, thoughts, comments that you might have as it relates to Hyflex teaching.